Welcome to the Lucifer series.
Thank you, Lucy. In subsequent videos, Lucy looks to become more of a player in our talks than she has been thus far. But all things take time to come to fruition, especially good things. As I speak, no less than 3 Beelzebub videos are in production that will be featuring Lucy. These 3 talks will be released simultaneously. Meanwhile, it is too soon to come out with our promised Tantra videos, but as the process between the producer of our videos, Neil Fox, and his old girlfriend Lasha develops, there will be more to share in that regard in terms of the general principles involved. Meanwhile, I wish an insightful day of Imbolc to our neo-pagan friends, especially to Wiccans of all persuasions. Fox, of course, is a non-fundamentalist Wiccan, the Wicca of the Goddess and the Serpent. A good explanation of what we are getting at with that can be found in our video, Lucifer on the Serpent. I say that for the benefit of new viewers. Here and now I will only mention that the goddess and god of Wicca are for Fox, and for those like Fox, a less literal business than it is for most Wiccans. And while the Lucifer series must stress the unbroken traditions in India that have endured all this time for well over 1,000 years, celebrating the goddess as Durga and her consort Shiva, Imbolc remains the day of the goddess as the Gaelic deity Bridget or Bridget, who was co-opted obliquely by the church and reformulated as the tragic figure of Saint Bridget, even as many of the planet's older Christian churches, most notably the Church at Rome, celebrates their day of purification of the Virgin on Imbolc itself. The Christ as the Lamb of God coincides with the pagan lambing ritual, when birthing sheep were tended to in the old days with all due mystical observance. Of course, as the ultimate symbolic lamb, the infant Yeshua, called Jesus, is said to have been brought into the temple of Jerusalem when a prophecy about him was foretold by an old fellow named Simeon. Now, the ritual purification involved there at the temple was not all daddy god moralism that would have it that a woman is unclean after birthing. Birth, after all, is physically a messy process, and, though rewarding in most cases, also emotionally draining for the mother. So, any tradition would sanction the cleansing of a birth's physical aftermath, just as even the most religiously daddy-dominated, woman-hating cultures have allowed the mother a time of rest after bringing a new life into the world, though the Lucifer series would have it that the idea of motherhood as being sullied by the taint of sexuality would seem a bit much. Nowadays, even the mainstream would tend to agree. Sadly, traditionally, Orthodox Judaism still continues with much the same thinking, as does Islam. But enough about that, and enough about what the older churches make of this time of the year. For the Celts, Imbolc was in honor of the goddess Bridget, not the saint that only came later. For personal reasons to do with the process that has been with Fox ever since his early 20s, Bridget has always been closer to him than other Celtic versions of the Godhead, even though there is, perhaps, some irony to this. Recently, however, he felt such waves of love from some unfathomable feminine source, which he decided must have come from someone close. But it was so imbued with the goddess that it may have simply been his own heart joined to other hearts, a touch of the goddess embracing more than one love, past and present, which made him think that he might fashion a video in honor of Imbolc. Imbolc probably fares from prehistoric times, the Neolithic period of the first Stone Age farmers, when people watched for serpents or badgers to come out from their dens to mark the approach of spring. In the US and Canada, the modern observance of Groundhog Day might well have its roots in this practice. Allow us now to present an English translation of a rather homely old Gaelic maxim to do with waiting on serpents to signal how much longer the winter might last. Here is Neil Fox to present his distinct take on the original Gaelic.
Higgin ahar osuntor radan brid. Gedrovel tri chen chichisnicket a le och un lo'er.
Thank you, Fox, for that moment of comic relief.
Well, I try. What can I say?
I ask our viewers to please think of the accent as an ancient Celt who spent most of his life in Stockholm,
Did my best.
or a modern American channeling his Irish by way of some misbegotten incarnation as a Viking. Fortunately, here is Lucy with the English translation.
The serpent shall come from the hole on the brown day of bride, though there should be 3 feet of snow on the flat surface of the ground.
Please keep in mind that the rising of the serpent on Imbolc is an ascent from the darkness underground into a day above that might well be dull and overcast and even snowing. By tradition, the ancient folk actually prayed that Imbolc would be a dark day, a day of foul weather, you know. The fouler the better, because every Imbolc, the crone grandmother aspect of Brigid, Cailleach, the Gaelic queen of winter, was believed to have always gathered firewood for the rest of the winter. If she anticipated a long time before the warmer weather, Imbolc would be sunny, in order that she could easily gather more wood. But if the colder months were to be a shorter time in coming, she did not bother to allow it to become sunny, because there would be no need for more firewood. So you see, the Celts rejoiced if Imbolc was a bad day. Admittedly a curious logic, but rather an optimistic way to look on harsh weather. And seeing hope in the bleak surface of things, to see past despair to brighter times ahead, is hardly a principle to be despised. Besides, as Fox has related recently to more than one person, the darkness is never the problem. Fear of the darkness is the problem. Fear of fear itself. Fear itself is natural and instinctive, an adrenaline rush meant to serve one's impulse for survival, never to undermine it, but a simple signal like pain. Unfortunately, fear of fear, denial of fear, pushing back fear, this is the issue with mortals. Experiencing fear directly, my friends, can become its own release. Inversely, repressing fear only achieves a lurking anxiety that never quite goes away. The essence of real courage is to face up to fear and not so much master it as to let it perform its proper function, to get you alert and ready and poised for whatever the real danger might be, if there is any, if what has you afraid is actually about something. But to sit on your fear and let it build and to allow your denial of it to rule you is to be so neurotically diminished in the end, it is tragic and farcical. As sensitive as so many spiritual people can be, this one lesson is hardest for them to grasp, because too often they seek only to sedate anxiety with meditation and prayer, rather than to release it by tapping into the primal animal core of what nature intended. Real courage channels fear. It does not run away from it. Let it out and let it go. This is the healing that at last opens one up to hope, and Imbolc is the day of hope. Be it the hope of spring, or, if one is Christian, the hope of the Christ. Hope is hope, and hope is medicinal. Let us just take care it is not false hope we are chasing. What I am getting at is both as much a psychic high as it is a possible reservoir of power that most people shun as being too dark, when in fact, given the right orientation, it can be not unlike a bright sun on a cold day after a long and bitter storm. For the Lucifer series, this is something to keep in mind even during the most severe winter, and winters in this century will often be extremely harsh, I must say. Harsh days and nights, not just physically, but in other respects as well. Then again, snow melts, the equinox arrives, spring comes, and soon it is the time of Beltane, the month of May, when Fox was born, which has been marked in modern times by many a political and social revolution. But that is another video for another time.